Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 45-minute webinar, How RFID Increases Shipment Accuracy. The first half an hour will be a discussion by our two speakers. Based on your engagement with lots of questions during the past RFID webinars, we dedicated the last 15 minutes to address those. Two housekeeping points before we get started. The session is being recorded, and you will receive a link over the next few days by email. Secondly, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A section, and we will be addressing these during the last 15 minutes. Barcode Group is a leading provider of barcode, mobile computing, and RFID solutions. Our solution platforms bring together hardware, software, supplies, and support. Placed on points of transition, RFID technology can identify thousands of items per second and is capable of achieving a read accuracy above 99%. RFID automates tracking of shipments moving in and out of dock doors without direct line of sight, reducing the need for human intervention and manual scanning. To discuss how RFID can improve your organization's shipments accuracy, avoiding mistakes and chargebacks, we couldn't ask for two better speakers to explore this topic with you. As a principal RFID solutions architect with Barcodes Group, Tom O'Boyle designs, integrates, and deploys RFID solutions for a wide range of industries, including supply chain, manufacturing, healthcare, education, and retail. With over 20 years of RFID experience, Tom has been an industry leader and early adopter of RFID technology. His work drove adoption of RFID solutions for wide area coverage, portal and dock door transactions, and software algorithms to improve read event data. Nat Hillary is a solutions engineer at Impinj with more than a decade of experience designing, implementing, and deploying Impinj product-based RFID solutions across a range of customers and industries. Nat's primary focus is on supporting Impinj partners in pre-sales activities. Thanks for joining us today, Tom and Nat. Please take it away, Tom.
Great, thanks, Edwin, and thanks, Nat, for joining us today. And thanks to the audience for participating here. Before we get started, I'm going to go through a little bit of the agenda so that you can understand some of the points that we plan on hitting. So the first agenda item will be, why is RFID hitting its stride? We're going to talk about where RFID has been and why it's important today and why we're really starting to see the acceleration of its adoption. And then after that, we're going to talk about what shipment verification is. It's a term we use in the industry, but from a customer perspective, that's not always a term that's used within their own industry. So we'd like to present what that is and what we mean by that. And we'll talk a little bit about the benefits of RFID and how customers come to realize an ROI based upon the systems that we put in. We're going to go through details of what a barcode shipment verification system is, the components that belong to it, and how they kind of work together. And we'll also talk about implementation, because if we have the best system in the world, we have the best tags, the best readers, everything being the best, it's really about how it gets implemented and how it gets absorbed and accepted within your organization. And the goal, no matter what we do, is when we're putting a system in, is we're trying to make sure that it's scalable and operational consistently for the length of time that you plan on using it, whether that's multiple years or multiple decades. So with that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to start talking a little bit about our next topic, which is, why is RFID hitting its stride? A little bit of a history background. RFID is not new. For some of the folks have probably known this already, but it's been around for a long time. In the industrial applications world, we've been using it since the 1990s. In long range RFID, what we mean by that is a read range that's more than a few inches away, really evolved into a potential useful tool back in the early 2000s. Back then, some of the retailers and the Department of Defense started testing and running pilots to try and track cartons and pallets in their supply chain. However, some of those applications didn't really go anywhere because the read rates at the time were relatively low and we were all learning how to use the technology. So, many of those pilots ended up stopping and reassessing their use and view of the technologies, yet some did not. And some of the pilots kept on going and really evolved from a knowledge base and a use case into some full deployments. An example of that would be the Department of Defense, which really in the mid 2000 or like 2005, 2006, really started to adopt RFID technology for their supply chain applications. So what we found is some people reassessed the use cases that they were trying to apply RFID technologies, and they let the technology evolve a little bit. So let's fast forward 20 years. Now we're really at a point where RFID technology has significantly changed. We as an organization and the industry as a whole have really zeroed in on how to deploy RFID, what use cases really provide meaningful data, and where the ROI has a tendency to be captured by customers. So that is where we spend most of our time. We're working on the use cases that are really something that we know how to do, that we have deployed multiple times, and that we can consistently get results that we're looking for. You couple that with, sorry, Nat, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so couple that with the RFID reader and tag technology, which has advanced considerably in its ability to hear and power tags. We've really been able to expand our use cases from what we were trying to do in the early days. Antenna technology has also advanced, where now we can really confine our read zones so that we're actually reading tags we want, and we're able to ignore tags that we don't want. And last but not least is our knowledge set of what works is really greatly expanded. So we can look at a process today, know how to handle it, know that we're not recreating something, we're not creating something new, we're typically replicating a common use case out there.
What I was going to say, Tom, is we saw all of this come together during the pandemic as retailers started to invest heavily in RFID because they wanted greater visibility of their inventory, especially with brick and mortar shutting down, staff shortages coming up. They started deploying RFID en masse to help address a lot of their supply chain issues, especially when it came to omni-channel, because people weren't going into brick and mortar stores. They wanted to be able to ship from warehouses and actually from the stores themselves as well, operating as warehouses in this context. So they wanted accurate visibility of what's in those locations so they can guarantee that what they're offering for sale on the website was actually available for shipment, but also available for shipment from the closest possible location to the customer to ensure that they were able to get the item to the customer as quickly as possible, but also as cheaply as possible as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we've had expansion in technology, we've had expansion in use cases, but another couple points that's really driving home the adoption. And that is most customers are having a hard time hiring, training, and retaining operational workforce folks, right? So the ability to get the right type of labor, keep them there, train them appropriately, and get them to be useful from the system has been hard for customers to do. So we have this lack of skilled workers out there. And in today's world, because of the omni-channel presence and really just the overall adoption of quick shipments of products from various different suppliers, we're seeing many more shipments than we ever saw before. So in the past, where people would just palletize and wait for the pallet to come in, and then they just get that 1 or 2 boxes off it, now we're sending out the 1 or 2 boxes separately, right? So what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot more shipments taking place. And what that really means is there are more chances for customers to have missed shipments. There's more chances for the wrong box and the wrong pallet to go onto the wrong truck. And that has a tendency to cost our customers. So that is driving adoption here from an RFID perspective.
So for the context of this presentation, shipment verification is essentially answering the question, am I sending the right thing to the right person? There are two ends to it. If you imagine a supply chain, you've got the manufacturer sending stuff to a distribution center that then sends stuff to the customer. So the manufacturer, first of all, needs to verify outbound, am I sending the right thing? Is what I'm sending satisfying what I've stated on my advanced shipment notice? Am I sending what the customer's expecting? Similarly, at the distribution center, when you receive those products, verifying that those products received are actually match the advanced shipment notice. I will point out at this point that that is a particular pain point that hasn't really been invested in my experience, and that is manufacturer compliance, making sure that what's on the ASN, the advanced shipping notice, actually matches the product coming in the door. Once again, at the distribution center, stuff arrives en masse at the distribution center, but it's often broken down. There's items are picked, individual items are picked and put on a pallet for shipment, say to a retail store. Shipment verification is also used to verify that the outbound goods from the distribution center to the retailer actually match the order list that they have. Shipment verification is all about verifying that you've either received or sent the right items to and or from the right people.
Absolutely. So one of the techniques that we use during this process is the ability to what we call aggregate various different or group various different pieces together. So one of the common requests we get from customers at first is we want to read every item that's on the pallet as the pallet's being driven through at the dock door. And reality is physics makes that hard to do. So we have the ability to what we call aggregate or group things together before we're trying to read it at the dock door. So our system, what we have a tendency to do is read all the items to a case, read all the cases to a pallet, and we associate those things together. So now at the dock door, I'm not trying to read thousands of items as the forklift is hitting the trailer at about 5 miles an hour. We may be able to read all the items some of the time, but our chances are slim to read all the items all the time in that very short period of time when the tags would be in the field of view of the readers and at what we call controlled power levels. So controlling the power level is important so that we're not reading anything that's going into dock door number 1 and reading the things that are also nearby dock door number 2. So this grouping process allows us to be very consistent and get excellent results and get the customers the accuracy that they're looking for.
So why shipment verification? The first one is, the return on investment for using shipment verification speaks for itself. I have one specific customer that I worked in, just as a for instance. They were looking at improving the accuracy of their outbound shipment from their distribution center. It was a brand name garment manufacturer, and they wanted to verify that the items they sent to their customers, their end customers, the department stores selling their products, actually matched the order. And the reason they were looking at RFID is because they knew that they were spending somewhere in the region of $3.6 million per distribution center per year to correct missed shipments. So by eliminating missed shipments in 1 year, the RFID paid for itself. And also by adding the extra check, the RFID check, they got the operational efficiencies of RFID. They don't have to add additional personnel for quality checks on the line to make sure that the orders are actually the packing is actually meeting the orders as they go out the door. one of the other things that we found when it comes to operational efficiency as well is it's stuff you don't think about really. We had, and we, this in this instance is Mutual Barcodes and Impinj, have a mutual big customer, and they found in using shipment verification, specifically verifying pallets as they go through the dock door using RFID, that they saved a significant amount of time because they didn't actually have to get the forklift driver in this particular instance didn't have to get off the forklift to scan the cartons with a barcode scanner. So they didn't have they didn't have that overhead of getting out, scanning, getting back on the forklift, and they were improving their efficiency of receiving shipments by about 30%.
Yep, that's true. And one of the things that we had seen in the past too, same type of process where at the dock door, in order to scan the pallet ID that happens to be what they wanted to scan, their customers would scan a pallet ID, then they would scan a barcode that represented the dock that they were being loaded into. What we also found is on the fork truck itself, if the barcode was not directly facing the operator, instead of getting off of it, the operators would actually spin the pallet with their forks just so that they could actually get the barcode in a position to scan it. Just the reduction of doing that, generally speaking, we're seeing savings of, you can call it savings in time, or you can increase your throughput with however you want to look at it. It's really somewhere in that 25 to 30% range. So we're seeing customers not only save money because they're shipping the right product and don't have those missed shipments or those chargebacks, but also that decrease in labor to actually load the same amount of trucks, which allows them to expand without adding additional headcount to it. So I want to talk a little bit about our barcode shipment verification portal system, right? So we've been doing this a long time. We've got about 20,000 RFID portals deployed worldwide. We've got one customer who's got 2,000 portals deployed at pretty much every dock door in their distribution center. So we've got some pretty good experience doing this. And our RFID shipment verification system is really based upon making sure we get the right truck being loaded, right products being loaded onto the right truck. And a big part of that is using our exclusive wave antenna technology. And this wave antenna technology gives us the consistent, controllable RF energy to cover the dock door from the lower part all the way to the upper part without crossing over energy into the door next to it or into the staging area. We have a tendency to really want to tune the system so that as soon as that pallet hits the load plate of the dock door, we're starting to read those tags, and we're not reading it until it hits that point. And what that does is that allows traffic to go by the dock door that doesn't get read by the RFID antennas, and only the traffic that goes through the dock doors actually gets read. So our wave technology antennas are really different than the rest of the industry, right? Most of the industry uses what we call patch antennas, and patch antennas typically have been used in the past. They came out of the point-to-point communication application world, and they're meant to actually send energy in a very specific direction and as far as it can possibly go. And the energy, as it comes out of it, actually emanates from a single point and comes out like a football, and it expands both vertically and horizontally. So our wave antenna is different. It is actually designed so that it radiates the entire length of the antenna element, and it fills in all the gaps. So we don't have any gaps close to the antenna, and we don't have to turn the power up on the antenna in order to try and fill the gaps with that bubble, which then expands our read range into the doors next to it. So what we're really able to do is be able to control that energy just at the dock door and load multiple dock doors next to each other simultaneously without getting cross read events. But the antenna is not the only piece of the puzzle, right? It's a big piece, but it's not the only piece. We have our SLS View software, and View software is written from the ground up, which allows us to control and manage the readers at the lowest possible level. So this gives us incredible control of the read zone and allows us to take that Impinj reader and tweak it to the point that we're getting exactly what we're looking for out of it and not trying to read anything further away. And that really allows us to do very specific use cases. And one of the most prominent is ship verification. So this software, of course, ties into the customer's WMS or ERP system and handles all the read transactions and feeds those transactions back to the WMS or ERP. Because in the end, the RFID system is just a transactional system that gathers the data up, packages it in an appropriate way, and sends it back to the system of record, which typically is the ERP or WMS. One of the other major components is our RFID tag, right? So choosing the right tag is critical to the success of the application. We tune our portals and our software associated with them based upon the tags that we're using. Changing them or using something different is going to get us different results. And we've had a tendency to see where customers have been using our portals and everything's been working fine. They, for whatever reason, end up getting different tags, thinking, well, it kind of looks the same and it should perform the same, and it doesn't. And then we start having problems related to our success rate is not as high as what it used to be. So our goal is to have a system that is consistent and scalable, and tag performance is one of the key factors. And having the wrong tag in there can reduce our level of success, and we take that very seriously. And last but not least is our professional service team, right? So our professional service team is who deploys the system for you. So we get everything installed. We tune every one of the portals to make sure they're operating correctly. And our goal is to get that up quickly and efficiently so that you can start gaining that return on your investment as soon as possible.
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to make a comment on the SLS solution in general. Mm-hmm. We, being Impinj, have spent a lot of time looking at shipment verification from a number of different perspectives. Starting with the patch antennas that you described, using our gateways as an instance, but packaging all of that up with algorithmic style solutions. All of this coming from either Impinj or other vendors. And in short, we haven't found a solution yet that's quite as effective, both from a functional perspective and also a cost perspective, as the SLS solution. It just plain works. And I've had many people say, but look at it, the wave antenna, for instance, but on the data sheet, it shouldn't work. Hey, I don't care what the data sheet says, it works. And that's why we really, whenever we come to a shipment verification solution that a customer is asking for, we always recommend SLS.
Yep, understand. And it does. And we've got the data to prove it based upon the number of dock doors we've done and actually the length of time that the customers are continuing to use the system to prove it out. So what's the next step, right? Well, the very first step for most customers that we suggest is set an appointment with one of our solutions architects. So our team of experienced engineers will dive deep into the problem. And we're going to ask a lot of questions, and it'll be very fruitful to get those answers, because we're really trying to hone in on the issue at hand and how we're going to try and solve it. So we're going to ask about exactly what that problem is that you're trying to solve. What causes you to make that call to have us have this discussion? We're going to try and make sure we understand the impact to your company. What is the cost impact? We're going to start asking you things like, what's your process today? How do you pick? How do you stage? And how do you load your products in? What technology to use today? Do you use barcode scanning, a manual checklist? We have customers who scan the pallet, scan the truck and every single pallet. We have other customers who stage everything, bring it all to a staging area, manually scan every one of them, and associate it to a shipment. And then the drivers just load onto the truck, right? So we have people do things in various different ways. So we're trying to make sure we understand that. We also are going to want to review the products that you're shipping and what items are going to need RFID tags. How are they palletized? Are they palletized? How are they palletized? How are they packaged together? What quantities are involved? In addition, we're going to ask you or want to either see or get pictures of your dock area. So how many doors are we talking about? Are there separate receive shipping doors? What does the spacing look like between doors? Does the door go straight up or is it garage style? Do we have a load plates? What obstacles are in the way? There's lots of details to really get into on that call. So, we're definitely going to start diving into a lot of the details, but it's important for us to get those details because as much as we say shipping verification is for lots of people, and it is, it's slightly different at some organizations based upon your use case and how you operate today.
I like to think of this as the watermelon problem as well.
Yep.
What I mean by that is, say you're a watermelon distributor and you want to know where every single one of your watermelons has gone. Well, watermelon and RFID, they're not natural bedfellows because the watermelon itself will desensitize an RFID tag that you might place on it to the point where you really aren't able to read them at all. However, tagging the cartons in which the watermelons are shipped, that is very doable. So if you have a standard carton, you know that when I ship these, I'm going to have 24 watermelons per carton. It's easier then to actually ensure that you have a workable solution. So that's the watermelon problem, making sure you're tagging the right item for the right reason and at the right level to ensure that you get operationally the information that's valuable to your organization. Moving on from that, does RFID fit your organization? This is about looking at the integration of RFID holistically. In my experience, adopting technologies into an organization, you need to consider the people, the process, and the technology. And you need to make sure that you understand the impact on all of the above. Anything that can get in the way, it could be it can have a big impact on the deployment. And it can be as simple as like we were talking about removing the process of having to rotate the pallet in order to get to the barcode so that the forklift driver can actually know what pallets received and where to put it away. If you add a step like that, often those ergonomics which affect the people and the processes, adding a step like that can be enough to kill a project, especially during the pilot phase, because it can affect the overall operation. So it's very important to understand when deploying RFID in an organization, quite how it's going to impact everybody, and the people, process, and technology is a good mantra. It's the three-legged stool that makes sure that the technology is stable. If you haven't addressed all three legs, you can't guarantee that the RFID, the technology deployment will be stable for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that happens after that call, if we think there's a good process and technical fit and the organization is ready to absorb it and handle it, what we like to do is build up what we call a ROM, or a rough order of magnitude estimate. What that puts together is, here's where we think the what the hardware cost might look like, what the software cost, what the tag cost might look like. And then we like to use that ROM in conjunction with an internal ROI calculator that we put together. This ROI calculator, as you can kind of see on the screen there, starts using numbers that you had provided to us, where we'll ask you about some labor rates and some misshipment numbers and how often or how many headcount you use to actually load trucks. There'll be some of that data that you provide to us. But what we are able to do with this ROI calculator is take a look and say, do we have an ROI? It may not be perfect in your situation, but it's going to give us a good semblance of, we think we have ROI here. We think it makes sense to move forward. And, and this is just an example that you see up on the screen. This is from an actual use case with a customer who had 25 dock doors and had 2 shipments a month that were wrong. We were able to reduce some of their labor time associated with shipment verification. And as you can see, it quickly added up into after the first 6 months, the customer was in a positive ROI position. And clearly after running it for 3 years, it was significantly worth its time. So this ROI calculator tool is something new that we put together that really helps us figure out, hey, is there an ROI here? Is this worth it for everybody's time, to make sure that if we're going to all collectively put the time in, that there's going to be some value at the end of it.
Well, one of the things, just going back to the
Sure.
ROI calculator, one of the things I find interesting about trying to assess empirically the value, the return on investment of deploying RFID, one of the things that's very hard to quantify is customer satisfaction. And shipment verification has a huge positive impact on customer satisfaction. If you can guarantee that you get the right thing to the right customer in a timely way, and you always deliver on that promise, the customer satisfaction goes through the roof. You take that away, and it can have a huge impact on the return sales. Essentially, people coming back because they know what experience they're going to get. They're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a soft value, right? It's hard to put a dollar amount on it. It's hard to cost justify a system, but it definitely is part of it and has an impact to it for sure.
Yeah.
So if the ROI seems like there's a fit there, the ROM we put together, there's a couple next steps that we typically might go through. And in our solutions architects figure out which one we think we need to do next. But some of the next steps may be a site assessment, right? So it may be necessary for us to come out and look at your process to make sure we understand how it works. Look at some of the packaging to determine, how do we handle this, and look at some of the physical space areas. One of the other possible next steps is if we're unclear on which tags will work best. Now, sometimes it's pretty easy. We understand the application, we understand what's inside the boxes. We think we have a pretty good handle on it. But other times we have to do a test. We're not sure exactly which one's best. So we may ask you to send a pallet of your product to our test center for evaluation. There we'll test various different tags in various different positions and put together what we think is a good choice from an RFID tag perspective. Some customers' products, though, we know aren't in a position to ship to our test center. And we see this a lot where either it's frozen products or food items, or it's specialty materials that can't get shipped necessarily. So sometimes we have to do that evaluation on site, and we're able to do that. We'll bring equipment and tags to the site to make that happen. But after either some assessments in the tags, we make sure we understand that, we're really then trying to take that ROM estimate and start breaking it into phases to really come up with a phased approach to the project. So that project may end up where we think that we recommend a pilot, where we're going to do a small subset of the project, whether it's one production line or a couple dock doors, or maybe it's just a portion of your customers, maybe 2 or 3 customers that you'll use to ship this to. But what that does, if we end up down the pilot path, is allows us to make sure that we got the processes down correctly. And on top of that, get us more data so that we can actually prove out that ROI that we all anticipated at the beginning, and potentially add more information to expand your ROI calculation. We have a tendency to see, in fact, we had one customer who we were in the middle of the pilot. The pilot was supposed to be a 60-day pilot. We were like 20 days into it, and they came back and said, the ROI calculation, you guys were wrong, where it's way more ROI we're shifting out of pilot and we want to go to scaling this thing out. How fast can you do it, right? So sometimes it speeds up the process. Sometimes we need to go through its whole maturation in order to really understand that. But when we start talking about scaling, then we would either expand the scope at that particular facility or start adding other facilities in order to expand it out. But the whole idea is we can start small, prove the process, and then scale from there so that we have something that really is consistent, and we say scalable, but it's something that we can replicate over and over again at each one of your facilities.
Well, thank you very much, Tom and Nat, for sharing your insights. Now it's time for them to answer your questions. So please add those to the ones that have come in so far in the Q&A area. Now, we look forward to following up with you to discuss how RFID can help your business. So if you would like to receive an evaluation from Tom and his team to discuss how RFID can improve your accuracy and efficiency, or would like us to complete an ROI calculation for your organization, please send us an email or complete a schedule request on either of the listed websites. So let's start with some of the questions. One question came in early on, and it relates to the statement that was made, and I know that I did, sharing the 99% accuracy number. Now, if you could kind of explain a little bit where that number comes from, because, you know, it's probably easier to do that at a box or a pallet level tracking than at an item level. So what do we refer to when we speak about that?
Yep. So that goes back to where are your aggregation points in order to know that. So I'll just take it from, you know, and we call them levels in RFID. So we have item level, case level, pallet level, and then you're at shipment level, right? So the concept of item level, we have one customer who every single pair of shoes, boxes of shoes, actually goes through a tunnel, and we're actually making sure that all the item tags are in that carton and that they are correct. So we've now where we're getting read rates there in the 99% range on that particular tunnel to verify everything that's working there. So we have 99% plus on the item level at that carton. You now take that carton, and we're adding a bunch of cartons together that we've done that to, and we're associating those cartons together, and typically like at a pallet wrap station. And we're able to get typically in 99% verification of which cartons are on that pallet. So let's say that there's 60 cartons on that pallet. We now have that. So we're at 99% at the item to case. We're at 99% at the case to pallet. And then at the pallet level, especially at the pallet level, where we have these dock doors being controlled with our readers, we're typically at 99% plus at that level. So what we have a tendency to be is when the customer's looking at their shipments, the right product on that truck going to the right customer, we have verified 99% at the item and the number of 99% cases to pallets, and then 99% plus pallets onto the truck. So we truly are sitting at about 99%.
Right. Question about distance. So is there an issue if two or more tags are too close in proximity? What's an average ballpark distance that an antenna can pick up a tag in a fixed installation?
So reading RFID tags, we can read them very long distances if we want to, right? So it's really about trying to control the reader so that we're reading it at the distance that we want it at. But for instance, when we're dealing with RFID tags, we can read tags within, you know, a half an inch of the antenna, all the way up to 35, 40 feet away, depending upon the antenna and the power levels that we have. And we can read as many of those tags as we want. So, you know, realistically, I think the reader specifications call for 800 tags per second from a read range standpoint or more, right? So we literally could read thousands and thousands of tags in seconds. In fact, I just did a project where we were doing a cycle count at a retail warehouse, and at retail warehouse had all item level tags. And we read in under 3 minutes, we read 504,000 RFID tags.
I think it's important to point out that it's not just about what you can read and how far you can read for fixed RFID infrastructure. You want to also make sure that you understand where you're reading something, and that's specifically where the wave antenna comes into it, because you can constrain the read zone so that you can read stuff between the portal, but not outside of it. And that's managed by a couple of different levels. First of all, by the physical level shielding, there's some metal foil shielding on the inside to make sure that energy only goes between the portal and not either side. But also the low power of the new wave antenna ensures that you're constraining that read zone as well. So it's not just a case of reading the tag. It's a case of reading the tag and knowing what the location is, because you don't want to read a tag and associate it with the given dock door when it's 60 feet away, 3 dock doors down. That doesn't give you the kind of data that you need from an operation to make meaningful decisions. So Tom's right, you can read RFID tags from a long way, but we've found actually you don't just want to read them from a long way. You want to make sure you know where the items are when you're reading them. So constraining and managing the field of view of when it comes to RFID is a key part of the whole overall deployment process.
Now, both of you have done RFID for a long time, and here's a attendee that is asking about the cost of the tags. 2005, the statement was made like, well, we can get our RFID accepted if a tag gets down to like the 5 cents range. How much do you think that the price of the tags has to do with the acceleration we are seeing right now in RFID acceptance?
It has a lot to do with it. So first of all, as a tag chip vendor, Impinj is doing everything that we can to drive down the cost of tags and make them increasingly available. And we're doing a number of things that help to improve that. So for instance, we're moving from smaller wafer sizes to larger wafer sizes to increase the overall number of die that are on a given wafer. That helps to address the overall cost of the actual end inlay, the cost of manufacturing the end inlay. And simply through the increased volume, the industry is producing and consuming billions and billions of tags a year. So we're entering scales of economy as well. Whether you're at the 5 cent per tag level is purely at this point not based on anything other than how many tags are you consuming? How many tags are you buying and applying and using in your organization? That has a bigger impact on the per inlay cost of the tags than anything else.
How do you see it with people that have deployed barcodes? Do they move to RFID, and then what are kind of like the top advantages of that? Or do the two systems coexist in those situations?
So I actually see the two systems coexist constantly. We're probably never RFID enabling every process within a customer's operation. There's going to be piece parts where barcode technology is a little bit easier to deploy or operationally use, so we still use that. But there are advantages in certain use cases, right? So when we walk a facility, one of the things that we're looking for is the touch points where an operator has to intervene and scan that barcode. And we're looking to say, can we use RFID technology to capture that data at that moment in a quicker way and or more consistently? And so what we find, shipping verification is one of them, where if an operator has to scan a barcode on a pallet, scan a barcode on a trailer, that slows them down, and if we look at some of our data that we've seen from customers, once they've shared it, the consistency of that is not as high as people think. We have operators who scan them very well when people are watching. And then all of a sudden, when there's the pressure on and nobody's watching anymore and they have to get this truck out the door, they don't scan it. I had one customer who was shipping from their manufacturing site to their own warehouse. And they were actually shipping on barges, and the tide starts changing and they have to get these things loaded. And the operators who are loading it say, forget it, we're not scanning anymore. That's the warehouse's problem. We're getting this barge loaded and we're getting it out of here before the tide changes. So we have a tendency to see and look at applications where we're have to scan a barcode and the operator can't be consistent and it slows them down, or they're scanning a barcode and counting. As an example, doing a cycle count where they would scan one barcode and then they count the items and say there's 24 here. Well, we can read all of those tags faster than somebody can just scan one barcode and hand enter that value.
So you mentioned cycle counting, and question came up about inventory too. So maybe the last one that we take here, and I love your perspective on this, is what are other main applications? Like, is there a way to do inventory with RFID? Talk about cycle counting. So how people that may come in with one use case, which could be shipment verification, also start using RFID for other use cases like that.
Yeah, for sure. So we see it all the time. People say, I've got to meet a retailer's mandate. I want to start taking advantage of the technology. We start implementing ship verification so their missed shipments and their chargebacks go down. And then what we're starting to look at is we're trying to look backwards into the organization. And what we're looking for is, once you're paying for the RFID tag, now the more touch points, the more value we can extract out of that cost, the better off they are. And cycle counting is a perfect example of where they're going to start using that to verify. So cycle counting, we have the ability to drive around a portable RFID reader that's battery powered and cycle count somebody's warehouse very, very quickly, which allows them to actually do more cycle counts than they ever could before, which allows them to get more accurate. We also see the use case of pick and pack, where before they were actually manually scanning the items to a box, taping the box together. Well, now they may be still putting the box together manually, but we're reading all the RFID tags with a table so that we can verify that everything's in the right box even before it gets shipped out the door. So there's lots of use cases for the RFID tag once they've applied it. And we typically are starting at maybe that dock door level for shipment verification, but we're starting to look inwards to try and use it even further.
I've seen that progression in the retail industry. For many years, the retail industry has been very successful in using RFID for cycle counting in the stores. And that was driven by a large part by the department store mandates. You know, Macy's wants everything tagged, Kohl's wants everything tagged, Walmart wants everything tagged, et cetera, et cetera. But these manufacturers, as they have to fulfill those requirements, they've started asking questions about, well, if they find benefit in RFID, can we find benefit in RFID? And they've started using it, and they're going further and further back in their supply chain with their application of RFID. Order accuracy leaving their distribution center, leaving their manufacturer, cycle count accuracy within their own distribution center, not the retail store. So we're seeing once RFID is in place, the adoption and the expansion of the use of RFID is almost limitless.
Well, that's all the time we have today. And as you can hear Tom and Nat speak, we can do this all night, and I look forward to continuing to bring you these webinars and share their expertise with you. If you have any questions or how RFID might fit your organization, please reach out. Either send us an email or fill out a schedule request, and we can talk to you about your situation, and that could lead to an RFID analysis for your organization. So let us know how we can help. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thanks, Tom and Nat. It's been great webinar.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye now.
everyone. Take care.